Hello, everybody. I am back for another movie review. This time I am going to do Near Dark. Near Dark is a horror slash western that came out back in 1987. My birth year, by the way. And basically, the plot of this film is Caleb, played in the film by actor Adrian Pasdar, is a simple country boy who's just trying to get by and ends up coming one night while going out in town for some fun. He comes across a beautiful girl named May, played in the film by Jenny Wright, who he hits it off with. And one night while out for a slight date, he decides to make out with her, only to get bitten in the neck by her because she reveals herself to be a vampire. So slowly but surely he changes, and not before she and the rest of her clan pick him up and take him along with them, only to discover that he's already turned. So they give him time to see if they can call him one of them, because they're already seasoned killers, but Caleb, on the other hand, is not. So he's conflicted, struggling with the fact that he's now immortal, and he has to ultimately make a decision whether or not he wants to stay with them or try to find a way to regain his normalcy. So yeah, that's pretty much, I've established the plot of the film there right away. So it's one of those movies that, of course, I'm sure when it first came out, not many people were familiar with the movie because, well, first of all, yes, it was released theatrically in 1987, and unfortunately, it did not enjoy a very big theatrical run. It died off about as quickly as it came, for a few reasons alone. One is the film's company, DEG, De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, was suffering major financial issues at the time, so they were able to get the movie made, but they didn't have the finances to actually promote the film. So unfortunately, because of that, it did appear in theaters, but not many people were even aware that the movie actually even appeared in theaters. So it didn't get the attention that it needed. Not to mention, around the time Near Dark came out, it was pretty much competing against another vampire film that came out the same year, which was this one, The Lost Boys. And both movies share identical concepts. They're both about a man who's literally forced to join a pack of vampires against his will, and, he ultimately has to make a choice whether or not he wants to stay with them or go back to his actual family. So both movies share identical concepts. Biggest problem with The Lost Boys, on the other hand, the thing is, it was released by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers have a better promotion quota for the movie, so the film, the promotion for The Lost Boys was done a lot better, not to mention it had a more attractive cast of actors, and a bit more well-known at the time. So naturally, The Lost Boys enjoyed a much better theatrical run than Near Dark did. Near Dark is technically a vampire film, but the funny thing is the word vampire is never even mentioned in the movie. Nowhere in the movie is it even mentioned. Another film like that, The Hunger, with Catherine Deneuve, Susan Sarandon, and David Bowie, that movie didn't have the word vampire mentioned, and it's a vampire film, but yet this movie doesn't have this. The nice thing about this is three of its main actors were actually from the movie Aliens. In fact, they're all right there on the front cover. There's Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein, and Lance Henriksen, who are all from the movie Aliens that came out the year prior to the Near Dark's release. Now, even though I am doing a James Cameron marathon, technically James Cameron had really nothing to do with Near Dark, but he did suggest to Kathryn Bigelow, that the film's director, that she acquired these three actors that he worked with on Aliens. Now, yeah, Kathryn Bigelow does have history with James Cameron, because at one point she was actually married to him, and she would go on to direct two movies that had his involvement. She would go on to direct Point Break and Strange Days. And Kathryn Bigelow has become the first female ever to win the Academy Award for Best Director for her movie The Hurt Locker many years later. So, and also, there is another odd connection to The Lost Boys, not just the fact that both movies share identical concepts. The Joshua Miller, who played Homer in Near Dark, he's the little boy, the little vampire boy, he actually is related to Jason Patric, who played Michael in The Lost Boys. They're both actually half brothers because they're both actually sons of actor Jason Miller. So technically, yes, they're half brothers, which is pretty cool. That's one neat connection between both movies. Near Dark, like I said, was not a big hit when it debuted in theaters, but it actually was met with some pretty positive reviews by critics, although some criticized it for being a bit too dark and violent for the time, because it acts more like a Western, and the vampires are kind of like nomads, they're constantly swapping vehicles, moving around on the road. But like I said, nowhere in the movie is the word vampire mentioned, but yet they walk in the dark, they sleep at night, they sleep during the day, and they try to avoid daylight because it actually burns them. So yes, and they feed on blood to survive. So technically, yes, they are vampires. Before I talk about the Blu-ray here, I need to talk about this cover for the Lionsgate Blu-ray. This cover, I'm sorry to say, I am not a fan of this. I mean, take one look at it. Does it look like something familiar to you? It kind of reminds you of Twilight, doesn't it? Because, yeah, that's supposed to be Caleb right there, and yet they kind of made him look like Edward from Twilight, which, and May kind of looks like Bella from Twilight almost, which is kind of, well, obviously Near Dark and even The Lost Boys, both of these movies were actually big influences on the Twilight saga, but yeah, that's not really the case. I really feel like it should be the other way around. She should be the one looking like him and the other way because, yeah, well, I mean, in both movies, and also in The Lost Boys, the guy is lured into the vampire clan by a girl, pretty much. Almost. So both movies, yeah, like I said, they're very similar to each other. But Near Dark, yeah, like I said, it's a much darker film. It's more I think it's more brutal and more violent in a way. There's also a couple of actors in the film that would go on to become James Cameron, well, sort of like regulars, but have gone on to appear in another. There's a scene in a bar where there's a guy in a bar that gets beat up by one of the vampires, and it's in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. It's the same guy that Arnold comes up to and asks for the clothes, the boots, and the motorcycle, and he's the one that puts the cigar out on his chest. Yeah, that same guy appears in this movie. Guy really has a lot of trouble when it comes to biker bars, doesn't he? But yeah, suffice to say, I'm obviously not a fan of Twilight. That's why I'm not really a fan of this Blu-ray cover here. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the Blu-ray. Well, the Blu-ray, honestly, is kind of a mixed bag. The image quality in the disc, the video, let's open it up here real fast. So, yeah, there's the movie. I mean, there's the Blu-ray. As you can see, it's pretty, what it is. But, for the most part, the video on the disc, now, being that this is a dark movie, a lot of the movie was actually shot at night, so the majority of the movie is going to be at night. So, and honestly, this is probably not one of Lionsgate's better Blu-rays. The video is, it's so-so. During any of the daytime scenes, it actually looks really good. There are a few nighttime scenes that also look really good, but for the most part, it looks dark, murky, and a lot of the time, you can barely make out any detail. So, this is kind of a bit of a wishy-washy transfer. Like I said, it's kind of up and down. There are many parts of the movie where you can actually see a lot of great detail, and there's some parts where you really can't. Prior to the Blu-ray, I've actually owned an excellent DVD release by Near Dark. It was a 2-disc set by Anchor Bay, and it was actually a really good release of the movie. It had the film in digital remastering by THX, and the audio was in DTS, and it had a decent array of extras. And I will say the Blu-ray is just a smidgen better than the DVD. A smidgen better. I would say out of 5 stars, I would probably give the video on the Blu-ray probably a 3 out of 5. Some websites listed like a 2.5, but I would probably give it a 3 for the effort because, like I said, some parts of the film look really good, a good amount of detail, and there's some parts where I'm like, oh man, what did they even do here? I'm just saying. As for the audio sounds pretty good, but there are parts where, some of the dialogue is hard to make out because, most of the actors are talking with Southern accents, and a lot of the time, you know, some of them are kind of hard to make out. Adrian Pasdar, his character speaks with a Southern accent. I don't know if he kind of, yeah, because most of the movie takes place in Texas, so yeah, it's kind of hard to, some of it's kind of hard to make out. And of course, some of the actors that play the vampires, some of them, but the most of the, like, the sound effects, the music, and by the way, the music was done by Tangerine Dream, which by the way did the music for another film I actually did a review on, which is Legend. And speaking of Tangerine Dream, I actually have the soundtrack for Near Dark on CD here. So there's that. The front cover there is pretty cool because at least you have the three vampire leads, Lance, Jeanette, and Bill. So that's actually pretty neat. And the score by Tangerine Dream is actually pretty good. It's very mythical and kind of dark and pulse pounding, so it actually fits the movie. It fits the film perfectly for this quality. I would say for the audio, out of 5 stars, probably give it a 3.5. There are some parts where it sounds good, and there are parts where it kind of sounds a bit, muddled. But for the most part, it sounds pretty fair. As for the bonus features, the nice thing is the Blu-ray actually gets the same supplemental package from the DVD. Starting off, we get an audio commentary with Catherine Bigelow as she talks about the film. Her commentary is pretty informative, so she does talk a lot about the movie. There's Living in Darkness, making of documentary that runs almost 50 minutes long, and it's a very comprehensive look at the making of the film. It has interviews with just about everybody that was involved with the movie. Interviews with Catherine Bigelow, Lance Henriksen, Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein, Adrian Pasdar. No Jenny Wright, unfortunately. Deleted scene with optional commentary by Catherine Bigelow and some theatrical trailers. So it's not the biggest slew of extras, but it's pretty much mostly the same batch of material that came from the Anchor Bay release. And again, it's all about quality over quantity, as I've talked about in my Rambo First Blood Part 2 video. Again, there's not really much here, but in the way of quality, these extras are actually a pretty solid batch. So out of 5 stars, I would say I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5. Oh yeah, the audio is in 2 different flavors. They're in English DTS 5.1 and English 2.0 PCM audio. The 2.0 track sounds a smidgen different than the DTS version. Like the tempo is a little different. Well, if any of you have actually owned the Blu-ray release, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Both tracks sound way different to each other. So for the overall movie, I would probably give it a 4-star rating out of 5. That's just me. The Blu-ray, like I said, it's kind of a mixed bag. The video quality is good, but it could have been way better. But like I said, this is one movie where you might have to turn the brightness up on your TV because it is definitely a very dark film. Audio is not bad, but it could sound better. The extras are, like I said, not a big batch, but what's there is very informative, and the extras are really good about talking about the movie. So it's definitely a good batch to find out about. Another interesting thing is I actually wrote an article about this movie for the website ravenousmonster.com. I actually I'll even put the website in the description below. I actually wrote an article back when the film was celebrating its 25th anniversary. I actually wrote an article on the movie, so like I said, I'll post up the website so you can look for it. But it's actually, like I said, I think this is one vampire film that holds up very well, and like I said, its director did go on to make other things over the years, and Catherine Bigelow, like I said, became the first female to win the Best Director Academy Award. And she actually married James Cameron at one point, and they would go on to work on a couple movies. And like I said, James Cameron supposedly even filmed a cameo in the film. Although when I watched the movie last night, I was looking everywhere trying to find him, and apparently I couldn't. Maybe it's in the deleted scene, I'm not sure. But either way, it is pretty cool that he actually, he even worked on the set for at least a day, or he actually visited the set. I take that back. And yeah, I mean, he would go on to work with Catherine Bigelow on a couple other film projects, and so that's pretty neat, though. Even though James Cameron had personally no involvement with this movie, he did, however, manage to tell, like, here you go, try some of these actors out. You know, they actually might be worth using, and they actually were put to great use in the movie. Some great lines like "It's finger licking good," coming from Bill Paxton's character Severin. He had some of the best lines in the movie. Lance Henriksen had a great line like, "I fought for the South, we lost." And of course, Homer, Joshua Miller's character, obviously, I like how his greeting of Caleb, and he's like, grabs him in the groin. He's like, "I'm Homer. That's Homer. Mispronouncing it, I wouldn't want to be you." A tough little kid too. But anyway, yeah, the movie definitely gets a solid pass for me. Unfortunately, if any of you are interested in looking for the Blu-ray, you're going to be cracking your wallet open pretty deep to get a copy of this, because the Blu-ray is almost out of complete print. Last I saw on Amazon, it was about brand new. It was like $85. But thankfully, though, the Anchor Bay DVD, the 2-disc version, is much cheaper, though. The cheapest I could find it was like $12 used. So if you're interested in looking for the movie, you're probably better off seeking out a DVD copy of the movie. Or if you can find the Lionsgate Blu-ray at the cheapest price possible, because when I got it for like under $10. But that was when it was still in print. Not anymore. It's not. So it's one of those Lionsgate Blu-rays that went out of print years ago. So, but yeah, if you're lucky enough to find a copy of the film, I'd suggest picking it up and giving it a shot. The Anchor Bay DVD is still a really good release of the film. Like I said, it has all the extras that are on the Blu-ray. The video quality is not going to be. It's probably going to be as good as like I said, the Blu-ray, as I said, is slightly better than the DVD. It's still the best presentation of the film I've ever seen, but it could have been better. This is one film that it could really benefit from a 4K release, or better yet, maybe even get a better release of the film one day. So honestly, I would say if you're looking, like I said, either you can hold out or just get yourself a good, decent copy of the film if you can find it at a good price. But as I said, the Anchor Bay DVD is much easier to get a hold of. The Blu-ray, unfortunately, not so much. So, again, it's all about your preference. So, honestly, yeah. Anyway, this concludes the presentation. I hope you enjoy it. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel, as more videos will be coming out in the future. So, until then, take care and be safe.